going to call the meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We all were given the minutes prior to today's meeting. So do we have a motion to approve?
Move we approve
Okay.
approve the minutes.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Okay, number 4 is discussion and possible action on Sailfish Park Master Plan.
Yes, today's a punctuation point on work across 2 budget years on a site-specific master plan for Sailfish Park. The journey involved a variety of means of public input, and our consultants are here today to walk us through a presentation of the process and discuss any questions or comments we might have regarding the plan. They have fulfilled the commitments of their contract once they make this presentation to this board and then present a final presentation to the Board of Commissioners. That plan is projected to go to the Board of Commissioners ideally at their February regular meeting. So at this time, I'd like to ask Jim and Michael if they'd like to give their presentation.
Chris,
Yes,
how do I advance my slides from here? Do you have the clicker still?
I'll advance them.
Okay,
If you just say when.
okay, thank you. I'm Jim Ford from McGill Associates, that consultant she just mentioned. It's been an exciting process. I'm glad to see we've got some folks in the public here. This is an opportunity that I think you'll like to be involved with. If you could go ahead and advance that slide. So you've already given the introduction. It was a successful project in that we've got a lot of public input. It was 490 people, I think, took the survey. There were public meetings back in, I think it was July 5th and 6th. We had another meeting. Some of you, I recognize some of these faces, were there here recently. But I'd like to go over just a few slides, explain that process and what it ended up looking like in the end. You could go ahead and advance the slide, please. These are small TVs, but there's an existing site, Sailfish Park. You probably have driven past it. You're familiar with what it is. It's a very simple park. It's beautiful in that it is simple. I think there's some picnic tables, and there's the split rail fence, et cetera. It's at the end of a road. Some folks said they go out there and launch their kayaks, et cetera. Please advance the slide. Some pictures, if you haven't been to that site, illustrating what I just mentioned. There's the bulkhead, there is the fence, the trees. I think there was a large tree there when we started this process. After the comp plan, I think it came out, but regardless, it's still basically a natural site. Could advance the slide, please. That public input that I mentioned, there were surveys, both handouts and online. There were marketing cards passed out. That's how we got such a high number of people who took the survey and captured all that input. I want to go over some of the things that came out of that I thought were really important. And we asked the public things to consider. And that doesn't mean that they like it or not, but things to consider was restrooms or not. That was a big issue, right? Water access. We're an island. People want access to the water, right? Parking, obviously, there's existing parking, but what do you do with it? Amenities, what should they be? That's very important. Should the park have hours of use? How do you deal with that? Shade, this is an island and it's only getting hotter. And everybody wants a bit of respite from time to time at a park. The improvements that people desired ended up being, after that input, kayak launch needs to be improved, picnic areas, and parking. The 3 big things that I will get to in a minute when we look at the final concept. If you could advance the slide, please. So that last public meeting, and I do recognize a few people, 55 people came out to see the concepts that came out of that plan. I'm going to show you those concepts that might be hard to see on these TVs. But 2 alternate concepts represented what people told us they liked or didn't like, right? So that June 16th, 17th, we did visual preference boards, open discussions, et cetera. Please advance the slide. You guys, this is the visual preference board that you participated in, if you participated in those meetings. What that meant was is not only did we just ask you what you wanted, we tried to take images of what some of those things look like and put them up in front of everybody and say, this is what we're talking about, something like this, and then gave people stickers to vote on. And then depending on the interest level, some images received a lot of stickers and some didn't. And so it helped to interpret what you were also saying. Please continue. Some pictures from that meeting. 44 people came. I'm so glad they did. I think at one point there was some talk about a large development or something. There was some confusion. It wasn't anything like that, so it was really nice to show them the actual images. I heard a lot of, oh, is that all it is? with that, if you could move on. Those concepts I mentioned were the two big differences between them. One had a lot of boardwalk. One had less boardwalk. One showed a play area because there were folks who were interested in that. One showed a shade sail. A lot of these ended up not being part of the final plan, but they were things that people had asked to see in the concepts originally. Please continue. The ultimate things that people said as a group, as a community, was that launch, accessibility, the picnic areas. And these pictures represent not exactly what's going to be out there, but my best effort at trying to find images that look pretty darn close to what you'll be looking at in the future. Simple kayak launch. You've got one out here now. You're familiar with what that looks like. If you do a sidewalk, we understand the environmental sensitivity. You need permeable pavement, correct? This would be pavers. Bench swings as opposed to just benches gives people a little variety. I mean, it's a beautiful, natural spot. You want to go sit at and admire. You need a good place to sit, and that's what you've got there. Please continue. Now, click it one more time, please. That final cost estimate represents the board in front of you. It may be easier for you to see that than that up there. What we're looking at, if you don't mind me walking over here, there's existing parking. We're proposing that the handicap accessibility, which is very important to continue to use for all of us, would be paid. Well, that should stay natural. The existing fence, it's fine. It doesn't need to go anywhere. This natural space, leave it alone. And let's provide some access for folks that come here to that water. Also, you can't put pavement all the way up for various permitting reasons. There would be a transition boardwalk, existing picnic tables. What a great idea. Leave it like it is. Let's add a few more benches, a few bench swings, right? And then that kayak launch everybody was interested in. Keep in mind, this is a concept, not a construction document. Eventually, that will come to, you realize it in a construction document. I tried to show it roughly where I think it's going to be. It's probably going to change slightly depending on what the survey says. But with that, what the public wanted is represented here. That's natural. Leave it very natural. Don't do a whole lot out there. There's no reason to build the Taj Park when you've got something that everybody loves now. I wanted to add a few things. This is a process that included public input, resulted in a concept plan, but also to try to help the community find funding in the future, there's a report. The report is all that due diligence. What did you do? How did you do that public input? What do you know about that site? How sensitive is it? Because in the future, when you go after funding, they're going to want to know that you did this. Who knows if this will ever get built? But if indeed it does, you're going to want to have that moving forward. Because people change, ideas change, we want to have that consensus. Who were we at that time? What did we want? And this is that represents the concise opinion from the public input. With that, I know it was quick, but it's so simple, there's not a whole lot to it. If there are questions.
From us?
Yeah, I'll start with a couple of questions, just comments. The original 2012 master plan, that was the first Parks and Rec master plan that was done, had to end up having a page amended to it around, I think, page 14 or 24, that said that at Swordfish, it discussed mowing. It became a big issue. And so nowhere in the plan currently does it list the services that the town provides at the park. So we would just ask for the final version that it does say that currently we mow, we do mosquito control, we maintain the bulkheads, and there's canal dredging that occurs in the area, so that is captured in a plan.
So that brings up a good point. This is still in that phase where it's not been adopted yet. So this is another opportunity to take a look at it again and say, what do we want to make sure it says? So we're in that process now where we have pretty much a rough draft done. I think you guys have had a chance to see that and are making comments. We're going to have an opportunity to address those comments in the final document before it goes to council and is adopted. That brings me to another point that's very important, and sometimes your community probably understands this, but not all do. This is a plan. It's not saying you're going to do something specific. What it says is did you ask, and does the plan represent what people asked for? And it serves as guidance to help make decisions moving forward. A lot of the information that comes out of these kind of plans is not only useful for sites like this, but future sites moving forward. Well, how do we know what people think? Well, let's go back to this plan. People really like this sort of thing. We never built it, but let's consider it. So remember, this is just a guide. It's some way to capture who we were, what we wanted, and what could it have looked like. And that gets me to that last point on that slide before this, cost. Okay? while this is a planning document, you still have to make some attempt at understanding what the scope of the cost could be. Something that changes in all these plans. Before it gets adopted, our firm likes to go back over those numbers, compare it to existing projects and say, did things change? Inflation lately? We all understand how fast things go up, right? We want to give you the opportunity to see it right before it's adopted. We'll make sure those numbers are updated to the best of our ability, but it's at the planning level, not based on construction documents. If it takes 3, 5, 10 years to build this, it would be recommended that you do another evaluation of those things you said you wanted, because prices may have changed. Those kayak launches might have gotten cheaper. But you know what I mean. We have to make sure we check.
And additionally, another comment just to keep in mind is, and I know it happened in the middle of your process, so it's not in your plan, but just as an update, you guys talked about policy recommendation and the hours. There was a sign that happened at the park since you started the process that does list what the hours are that's on the fence.
And the trash
And there are 2 trash cans there instead of the one that's mentioned.
Kudos. That's another example of when you ask people what they think, you start learning things, and that low-hanging fruit, it's already starting to be addressed, so that's fantastic to hear.
In addition to the services currently provided out there, I'd like to make sure that we include sanitation mentioned in there. And I noticed that the reference to there's 2 trash cans out there, but on the final plan, I think it would be useful to show the sanitation stations out there.
That's easy to do. I can handle that.
Can you just discuss a minute why you did not include a restroom at that site? I think that was in the 2 kind of A and B plan. And
Yes.
then you come back with this. I just would, I
Right.
couldn't attend that meeting. I'd just like to hear your
Sure.
first thought process.
So, restrooms are interesting. If you go to the park and you don't have a restroom, you're looking for a restroom. But they're not always appropriate. It may be because of environmental sensitivity. It may be because the public just doesn't want it there. They may say, we're close enough to another one, why do we spend the money? Those 44 folks that showed up at the meeting, there were actually probably closer to 60 people, only 44 actually signed in. It was mentioned over and over and over again, and in my opinion, from the open discussions, I'd say a full 2/3 of those members were not in favor of a restroom. Now, that being said, it may take a while to get this to become a reality. If you change your mind, especially during that construction document phase, it can be added. But at this point, we were trying to reflect what people were saying, and they said they didn't want it. So it's not on there.
Thank you.
So on this process, was the main process to find out what the community input was to lead and guide the end result?
Yes, it's a bit more complicated as a planner.
Yeah.
So you do have that opportunity at the time that we're doing this. But remember, you have past planning efforts that have also captured.
Right.
You recently, at least in recent memory, did a comprehensive plan. And so a lot of data, you have to understand that plan as well. When you have a hot button issue like this, you get the folks, especially those that live right around it, you get a lot of input. But remember, it is a public park. It represents the community as a whole. And your comprehensive plan did a pretty good job of capturing everybody's ideas, while not site-specific. Things like, is it going to be permeable pavement or not, or how are you going to handle that? You can look back at other public input opportunities as well for information. However, I will say, this one, we had such great public input, which has been captured in that report. If you haven't read that, it was pretty easy to do this. It's good when people participate, so.
Yeah, go ahead. Go
Okay,
ahead.
no, you go.
I just want to say, when I looked up the acreage, this was about a 4-acre piece of property, and you said 2/3 of it was classified as salt, brackish wetlands, so,
Yeah, if you want, I can show you on here.
yeah.
If you look on
So-
that map, and I'm gonna turn it around.
How large is a site that we can actually even develop?
Let me show you that.
Okay.
That line that she's talking about, Michael, you can help me a little bit, it's about right there,
Okay.
okay? So this entire section is not included, this is the development, that's where
Right,
people are
right.
gonna go anyway.
Right.
They're not gonna go out here.
Okay.
Unless you're dragging a canoe or something, I hate to do that, just to be honest. I'm not sure everybody understood that. That site's not just what you mow, it's that little.
Right, yeah, that's why I was asking, acreage of what we had to develop, which is most of what the park
Right.
is. Very good.
How many public input sessions did you have?
Not including the comprehensive, but just for this site-specific, we had 3. We had 2 opportunities in July, 5th and 6th. A lot of people showed up for that. There were marketing cards that were distributed around, I know, because 490 folks or households, which represented a lot more than 490 people, took the survey. And we had that January 12th meeting to go over it all one more time and say, this is what you said. Are you sure this is what you said? And then that was a result of that process. So 3 plus the survey for this specific site.
Okay, so it's been referenced before because it was in the master plan, which is what got us to this process. So all of the public input that you've had that we're capturing here today is all done within the recent past?
That's correct.
Okay, so this doesn't go back to COVID years or anything like that? This is
That's
the
correct.
current public attitude?
That's correct.
Okay,
And I think you have to do that, especially because of COVID. So much changed after COVID. People want to be outside more, and so you're learning. There are new trends in recreation, so I'm glad we did it after.
for those public input meetings, you had 3.
Yes.
What was the setup time? In other words, from the time you announced it to the time that they showed up, how long did they have to kind of prepare to be there?
Right, so advertisements, Christie, remind me, I'm pretty sure we did a minimum of 2 weeks. Flyers, it was posted on the website.
Yeah, everything except I think the very last one.
Right, and I think that one we had about a week,
Yeah.
Okay, so short turnaround time,
the last one.
in essence.
However, I will say this, it kind of marketed itself. I actually saw signs running up and down the road, so people were thinking
Yeah.
about it.
I have a couple more questions. On the kayak launch, how, in the cost of the 435, do you have a rough estimate what that would be?
I don't recall exactly what the cost was. Michael, you might have a better, he builds them, so.
Yeah, and those vary, we get those variable costs, I mean, depending on the length and the structure, and assuming it's, aluminum gangways, how many rollers you want on each side, where you want dual access, multiple kayak access. We've gotten prices ranging anywhere from 30 to 60 to 80,
That's what I'm
depending on
saying.
the length. Yeah, it's it's a variable price. It really is. But I think in the cost estimate landed somewhere around 30 or 40 for that reason, because it can fluctuate.
That's right.
Depending on how you want the setup to be, and also, particularly in this case, you don't want to get out below the low tide mark and that distance, and
Yeah.
getting those depths correct. So that cost projection, as Jim mentioned, when you get to that stage and get that data out in the water, that's gonna get you closer to where your budget should be and any requested additional funding support.
So I think, just for me, my question is, if we don't have the kayak launch, does that drop it 40,000? Does it
45.
45,000?
Based on the current projection, again, that's
So you'd be-
for the schematic and conceptual where
Okay.
we are now, that's
So 10% of the cost, somewhere along there, okay. And then, more of a procedural issue, you're gonna kind of tweak everything and kind of cross the Ts and dot the Is after this meeting here. Christie, does that come back to here for us to say, or based on what he agrees to cross Ts, dot Is, and then that's what we're sending?
Yeah, that's just administrative stuff, so
Right.
unless there's an
Wholesale change.
overall huge change that you guys look for, they would make administrative changes in time for it to go to the agenda packet, and then it would be before the board. So the possible action on your agenda today is for you guys to vote on the plan
As it sits right there?
with the changes they're instructed to make.
Oh, okay, and so if we come up with any change that we would like, and now would be the time to do it, okay.
Trash cans if they mention.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead. Anybody else? Have an engineering question, which I may be outside the purview, but I think, so is there anything from an engineering standpoint that would prohibit anything that you've got here? Because I know it's been noted, and we've seen in the photos that that place floods. So is there anything from an engineering standpoint that would prohibit that from being feasible to do?
Not that we're aware of, as long as in the structural engineering design of it, that from the structural engineer's perspective and the geotechnical engineer's perspective, that footings, connectivity on the bulkhead,
Mhm.
piles in the ground, posts in the ground, depth of bury, flotation considerations, all of the other factors are taken into consideration on design. Typical for a dock, pier, bulkhead, those typical design features have to be considered, and even inundation with water and or flooding, just as you would a dock. So they are reasonably typical for the coastal environment, the waterway, et cetera. Obviously, this the site covered in water to various depths at different times and has in the past. So that has to be considered in design with the geotechnical engineer and structural engineer.
So all that is probably factored into the cost of that as well, the additional engineering and things of that nature?
As best you can on the front end.
Sure, sure. And is there any work being done to the bulkhead itself?
Part of that would have included either refurbishment, rework, once time of construction or prior to, look at the bulkhead, see if it's going to be a scab, a patch, a redo, or, tear out, redo, patch, scab on the front. So that would have to be considered, yes, at that time, based on the condition then.
Is there anything that's in bad repair now that you know of, as far as the bulkhead goes?
We didn't have a structural engineer to
So you
look
didn't?
at the site itself.
Okay,
But in general good condition, general repair, it seemed reasonable for now. But again, time changes things, and wave action does too. So it's, and particularly in adding or connecting the walkway or pad or anything to the bulkhead, any connectivity, canoe kayak launch outward,
yeah.
those things, those areas in particular start getting looked at more closely because now you've got other connecting features to them that may require modifications in that area that may not affect the rest of the structure.
Okay.
To add to that, Keith, the town takes a look at that as well because we built that bulkhead with grant funds through
Okay.
Brunswick County Soil and Water, and we have to maintain. So we are out there looking at, the building inspector looks at it to make sure everything's good.
And maybe I should have brought this up earlier because I looked at what we're going to do. We're going to, I guess, make a decision or a recommendation with possible action before any public comments. And I probably should have recommended maybe we move the public comments up because now we're going to ask to approve something, but we don't know if these changes that they've made, which removing the restroom was one of those, how the current public sees that. I know it's not a public meeting, but we do have public comments. Is there a way for us to do that?
Technically, you would need to amend your agenda before you started.
Right.
But just to follow up on that, this is a committee, then,
It's just a
the General
recommendation.
Assembly said that the, city councils, the Board of Education, and county commissioners have to have a public comment section, but they don't say where it has to be held in the meeting. So even the commissioners don't have to have theirs in the beginning before their action items, but they do hold to.
Okay.
So you're not out of order by having it at the
Okay.
end. And ours is typically always at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd just like to make the comment, I feel like the public has truly had a lot of opportunity to give their input. It sounds like we've had a great turnout at these meetings, and you've taken all of those comments, such as you said, the two-thirds or three-quarters of those that were in the last meeting were against a bathroom, and that has been addressed. So I really feel like that with your help, McGill's help, that we have done a thorough job of determining what the public wants. And my understanding, I want to commend y'all for a very thorough job having these public meetings and continuing to get input, because it has been a little controversial at a point in time, early on. And I'd love to just make the comment that if we were to get funding for this project, or a little bit every year, it could be a phase in. We don't have to look at spending a little under $500,000 up front. We can phase it in as long as we follow the plan and don't deviate from what, and I'm asking the question, we don't deviate from what has been presented today and what we may approve today, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Are we in a position, based on the input that we've gotten and the changes, the minor changes that both Christie and David Hewitt have presented, that we want to take action on this with a motion to approve as presented?
Yeah. I move that we accept the Sailfish Park Master Plan with the minor additions to that plan that have been mentioned at this meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Can we have discussion?
Oh, discussion, I'm sorry. Any more discussion?
For me personally, I've been on the site and I looked at it. I like this is a personal view. I like the swings, I like the ADA improvements and stuff. I don't know that the kayak launch is that's the best place for it. I think it's going to take a lot of money to get that out there. I know it's only 10%, but 10% is 10%. Someone once said $50 is $50. So I think for that reason, I'm going to vote that we don't move it forward as planned. Depending on y'all's view, but that's why I would vote no to what is presented right here.
Yeah, well, and then just a comment on that. When you do a site plan, you may never build any of this that's on the site plan. You may do 3 or 4 of these items. So, you know, whether we get to any of this, all of this, or some of this in the next 3 or 4 years is up for grabs.
Sure.
So that doesn't particularly bother me about the kayak launch, because I think if it's out cost prohibitive, I'm not sure we would do it anyway. So that it's on the plan doesn't give me much heartburn, because I think the town can pick and choose those items that they need to fund. And I think the kayak launch would probably not be the first thing they would put anyway, with the parking and some of the other things that need to be here, but that's just my opinion.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that on an annual basis, as we try to put some of these improvements in the budget, we identify specific things that we want to pay for or want to ask to have
Right.
budgeted. So if our committee decides, okay, unanimously or whatever, that the kayak launch is not a piece that we want to do, we can discuss and we can remove that. I think, and I'm just saying this, Keith, I think it's really important with all the input that we've got that we try to move forward with a plan.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
because it at least gives us a foundation to move forward when funds are possible and available.
Yeah.
So,
Would you be willing to remove the kayak launch?
no.
Okay. No, that's fine. I understand.
Right.
Okay, so, we need to take a vote, correct? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
3-1. Okay, thank you so very much for all that you've done. I know it's been a very laborious effort, but I feel like you have really done a wonderful job, and we commend you for that.
Yes, sir.
I agree.
Y'all have a great day.
Okay, we're ready to move on to the 5th item on the agenda. And Christie, you're gonna have to help us with that one because we've got a connectivity.
I will. I need to give him his thumb drive. Or sure.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. The 5th item is discussion on Block Q. And I think the architect could not be here, but he's going to be able to connect, and we're going to be online or on the phone with him. Correct, Christie?
That's correct. And he sent me a message, so let me just see what that says. The BOC sent a tasker to the PRAB regarding examining the Block Q site plan to include working with the current architect to develop a new site plan that includes a concert space with a dance floor, the planned ADA compliant bathrooms, green space, and other potential amenities. I included the tasker in your packet. Mr. Baker from Pinnacle Architecture is going to be called. He could not be here today, so he can have an interaction with the board today regarding what might be needed for furthering his scope of work. And so I'll take the opportunity to call him on speakerphone now. He's going to come through that system at the front there.
Okay. And we are ready to move on.
I'll ask her more.
Hello? Randy, can you hear us? It was ringing, but then it went away.
Here it is.
Okay.
Hey, Randy, you're on speakerphone in the meeting, and I've just introduced the topic so the board can hear you now. Can you
How
hear?
are you guys doing? I apologize for not being able to be there today, but I just got out of the bid open.
No worries, it happens.
What can I, do you have any questions that I can answer, anything like that? Because what I'd like to do is, this is what I've talked to David and Christie about. I know you guys only meet once a month, but I'd like to get down there, I mean, to meet with you guys, a committee or whatever, if we can, in a little bit more of a, week to week or bi-weekly or something like that, so we can get something, moving forward in a expeditious way. But I will leave that up to you guys. I'm not sure of what you guys, your time frame, that type of stuff.
So, Randy, just so you know, I've asked the board to provide their availability for the next 2 months in order to try to facilitate something of that nature, if that's what you think is going to be needed for this.
That's wonderful.
And then just a few things that we need to consider as you're beginning to look at this that I'd like to bring attention to, just so, since this is new to this board, just making sure that we're all on the same page with how we need to go forward here with a different plan to look at. So the pavilion's location as a possibility in Block Q really needs to go through some sort of public vetting component, because the December BOC meeting was the first time it's been discussed publicly. I think there is some confusion because maybe several of the old commissioners for the previous board may have had individual, not in a public meeting, conversations regarding this, but it's not been publicly vetted for the people that live in the community around there to this point. And as this board moves forward and we're considering, that from a logistics perspective, as the program manager who handles concerts, we also need to consider that both Ocean Isle and Oak Island do have great performance stages, but that's not mixed with parking in the same space. So currently where the pavilion is, the police department has to block off the general parking around that area, both streets, because the bands bring in, one has an 18-wheeler, the other have box trucks. And so a containment area around that would have to be considered, as well as infrastructure to handle that kind of heavy equipment going up to a facility like that. And also, there's at least 7 to 10 band members with each band, and so the big trucks that come is just for the sound equipment. They all bring their own individual instruments, so they're not letting that come in the sound truck, and they all have to have spaces next to the stage too, which they currently have. So there are some things logistics wise with a relocation that have to be considered on a plan, and without any other discussion on how to move forward with that, with this board to consider things, the thing I fall back to is something much like we just did with Sailfish, where we come up with concepts that can be publicly vetted, and then it comes to some kind of final. But I'll defer to the board and you to talk about what might be needed to get from where we are now.
Absolutely. And the only thing, what we would do in our first little meeting, and I apologize for not being there today, is to see exactly what size, pavilion that you're looking for, and what logistics, that you want in that. And then once we get to a scope of work something out, bring it back to you guys, say, this is what I gathered from our meeting, and then we can work from that point to say, yes, this is what we want, or no, that's not what I like, this is what I need to do, that type of stuff. And that's why we need a little bit, quicker meetings than a month, But I'm at your, exposure, if you will, so.
So would there be any additional charges but for the first interaction you're talking about so that we know as from the administrative side whether we need to take that to the Board of Commissioners?
No.
Okay.
We're still basically under contract to do the master plan or phase 2. No, all that stuff, I'm still good. We're good with that. The only time it would come to whatever additional fees or whatever is once there is a quote unquote approved, design, then whatever we would do at that point, I would say this is what it would take to get the structure done, this is what it would take to get the roads, because we will have to probably redo the site plan that our civil engineer did that we had permits on, maybe not. So, and we can go from there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
But I look forward to meeting with you guys and see exactly your input to see what we can do. And like we said before, to actually, and I don't know the direction that you guys are looking at, but in able to do any type of boat trailer parking or things like that, that eats a lot of space up in that block Q area. So we'll have to look at that, portion of it.
Is it good for us to ask questions now? You have anything? Good afternoon, sir. This is Keith Smith. On the existing layout that you have here, one of the things that one of the commissioners mentions was using pervious instead of impervious areas. So I think in your calculation in that, I think that's probably one thing that he would like to see addressed. And when we switch over to that, my question to you would be, is that a swell that is around, I guess, is that the north, that's be the east end? No, that'd be the north end. Is that right?
Right, you talking about like the detention pond?
Yes.
That type of stuff, the retention. No, that's not actually a berm. That's just a little low area to hold, hold any type of,
To retain,
water, that type of stuff.
that retains the stormwater on site, or at least somewhat?
That is correct.
So if we start looking at pervious areas, is there an opportunity to put that stormwater retention underground and make that just flat space?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay. Christie, for simplicity purposes, would that be the best place if that became level and didn't have that retention, I'm gonna call it retention pond, I know it's not what it is, retention swell, if that was to become level, we kept the boat parking where it was, then would that be the best place to put the pavilion based on customer input or town input?
I'm not prepared to give that feedback
Okay.
today. I
Okay.
think that's a discussion y'all need to go through all the
Okay.
parameters of that with him and at your sit-down meeting and talk through the what ifs.
Okay.
What piece of the spaghetti changes if you do this here?
Gotcha, okay, understand.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Chris, because it all depends on what type of venue you want to be on, just like a backstage, or, or do you want a pavilion that it can be viewed from 360?
Gotcha.
That type of stuff, so.
Well, I'm good with like every 2 weeks, meeting bi-weekly, just to start somewhere.
I think I've received most of the feedback. There's some members that had doctor's appointments today that couldn't be here, so I'll coordinate calendars against
Okay.
my schedule with other meetings, and I will get something out to both Randy and the board.
And
And I would,
That sounds great.
I know Christie's gonna look at her schedule and all of ours, but I would encourage particularly the first meeting or two that we all try to be present. So Christie, I know you'll take that into consideration. There may be some meeting times if we're meeting every other week that everybody can't be here, and occasionally there will be some conflicts. But I think so, at least we're all in that same sheet of music, and we'll communicate that to those that are not here today. I'm anxious to get started. I don't know about the rest of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And I'll throw this out, if it works better, and I don't know, I'm just throwing it out, if it works better to do it, after 5 o'clock or whatever, I'm game. You guys just let me know when the best time to work, with your schedule. So I don't mind if it's 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. You guys just let me know.
none of our board works full-time, anymore.
Well,
You don't. They don't work full-time, so I think we do have some flexibility during the day. But we may have to have a morning meeting and an evening meeting. We'll just kind of have to look at availability.
Christie, while
Yes.
we're getting ready to have our first meeting, is there a way to coordinate the public input session with that for time purposes? In other words, the prior board said 2 weeks, or the gentleman said 2 weeks. So if we were to announce it, to go ahead and get a public input session done?
I think what you want to do is have him put something on paper
Okay,
to let them be able to look at it,
Okay.
instead of just broad concepts, or for you guys to at least narrow down what you think should go there and then get your public input. I think it's a little early to,
Okay.
I mean, there will be public meetings, so the
Sure,
public
sure.
can come to any of it, but as far as trying to have a full-on input session that early on without knowing things that you guys want to
Mhm.
put check marks beside, and then things that maybe logistically, you want to move to the back burner on it, then I think you need to narrow it down a bit before you hold an actual public input gathering where they're trying to view schematics.
How many are required?
There's not room.
There's no requirement? Okay.
and Christie, is there anything from the town's perspective, if we were to, well, I guess we have to do something to the pavilion. Are there at least minimums that you all need for other programs that you have or would like to have based on programs that we already have at the current pavilion? Is there some adjustments that need to be made or add-ons that you need to think about that, but that's kind of one of the things we could think about.
Well, most of the bands fill up all of the current space,
Mhm.
and yoga fills up the entire space as well. And those are the two things that are there the most consistently. It is rented on occasion for like wedding receptions, family reunions, that kind of thing, and people bring in their own tables and chairs. So I don't know that you want to entertain going much smaller than what you have, but that would be my answer to your question.
Okay. And we don't know what the Wildlife Commission, I'm not sure what term of the organization is doing with the current boat ramp and the parking that they have. We don't know their plans at all at this point.
They're planning to do some sort of rehabilitation over there, but they're about 2 years out and they're not to a point where they have a plan.
Okay, so we don't know any impact, whether they're going to increase or decrease parking or,
And David can correct me if I'm wrong, because we were both in the meetings, but they did not have high hopes that they could increase the spaces that they had. They were
Okay.
looking to make them more efficient if possible.
okay,
I don't think they know what they're doing.
okay, all right.
So was there any discussion about doing anything for boat launch on the other side of the intercoastal that's in our local area?
Been a lot of discussion about having something over there. Nothing official, everything unofficial, and to date, nothing's gotten traction.
Because that would have a huge impact on the number, I would think, to come to put their boats in on.
I got nothing for you to hope on.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Well,
So I think
we're hopeless.
more specific question. In that meeting, did they ever mention that that boat ramp would go away in the next 2 years?
No.
Okay. Do we know who, like, when they back up on that hill, the trailers, is that part of the wildlife section, or is that part of the pavilion space?
You need 4 surveyors and a man from the Corps of Engineers to figure that out. If you go look at the site plan for the sewer lift station or whatever that we have over there, not only would you need surveyors to interpret it, there's a lot of stuff that goes on there. So I would be remiss
Okay.
to even guess at where the line is on that property.
Okay. One last thing, Christie.
Without having it field truth and somebody put a peg in the ground,
Yeah,
I'm
gotcha.
guessing.
So, Christie, I'm reading this direction here, that includes a concert space and dance floor. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be moved there. It's just the site plan needs to have it factored in.
Yes, you guys are to entertain that as an option.
That is optional in it. So if we, I don't know that we would, but if we come together and said, no, that's not a good place for it because of public input or for site restrictions or whatever, then they're not saying figure it out. They're just saying, is it an option?
They would like your is my understanding, they would like your feedback on a path forward. And if you get to the end of it and logistically you see that, I'm just going, because since green space isn't controversial in this topic, I'm going to say that green space is not needed, then you would tell them that green space wasn't needed and why.
Okay.
Because they've got a lot of things listed here that we may or may not, they've got a lot of things for us to consider, and it may or may not all fit in there.
Yeah.
Forgive me for interjecting, but I believe that the tasker was tempered by providing a number of things for y'all to consider, and I believe that the quote was, there was not a desire to handcuff.
Okay, okay. Yeah, because I seen in the next thing, it says the Block Q being revisited since the pavilion may not need to be demolished. So if we don't demolish the pavilion, I'm assuming it would be best just leave it in the same place and not put it there. So, okay, I understand that better now.
I will add on though, during this discussion, to keep in mind that the current pavilion location also has limitations. For example, the Corps of Engineers easement goes right through the middle of where you go up to the dance floor and then over to the left. So all sites have limitations
Yeah.
to consider as you're going forward with this.
When we're doing this, are we to consider what it would cost to make repairs to the pavilion as part of the overall scope, or just focus on Block Q?
Block Q.
Okay.
My understanding is y'all are having someone look at the pavilion, correct? The
Correct.
current one. Okay, to see if,
That was a separate tasker for the
Yeah.
staff.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
But the previous, engineer's report on the pavilion basically gave us through this summer with the new supports that they put up, I think. So if the engineer that y'all have coming in the next few days or the week gives a thumbs up that we're okay through this concert season, then it's looking at different scenarios. We as a board could come back, or committee could come back and say, this is, if we move it to Block Q, this is where we'd like to have it, whether it's on one end of this property or a different end. But financially, if it's less expensive to leave it where it is, we as a board can recommend that as well, correct, Christie?
That wasn't your task.
Yeah, that's not your
That's not the
tasker.
task, okay.
But
I'm
you guys
overstepping
are
my
just
bounds.
looking at the master plan for Block Q and what should be there in the
Okay.
future. The current state of the current pavilion and what's gonna
That's
happen there
neither
is
here.
not.
Okay.
Okay.
That's still with the board.
Okay.
I needed clarification. I didn't need to overstep my bounds.
You're good.
Sorry. Sorry.
And with regard to narrowing the scope, we don't need to worry about amending budget or amending what we're going to budget. Doesn't move into our budget or anything like that. Is that correct?
Currently, so the only way I know to answer your question is, the rec department has a budget workshop next week. That isn't on what we're expecting next year, that's for what's this, looking at this current fiscal year. But when we get to that, I don't think this process will have played out by the time we get to where we have to put budget numbers in. It was in this year, upcoming year's capital plan as a placeholder for $300,000 for this year for new pavilion. So that number will be what goes in until we learn more information for consideration.
Okay. And we have board members that weren't on when we did the master plan this last time. And Block Q had not been, correct me if I'm wrong, please. Block Q had not been even discussed, I don't think, at that time, and I know it had not been purchased at the time that that master plan was developed. So this is an add-on to Parks and Rec, correct?
Yes, I think what I heard you just say is Block Q was not in the comprehensive plan in 2021. Is that what you just asked me?
Correct,
Yes,
yeah.
that's correct.
Okay.
But it does say something about trying to provide additional access and looks at the Jordan Boulevard area, but that property wasn't purchased.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So do we have any other questions from the committee? I think that we're all eager to get started with the discussion, and Christie has some of our dates, and I'm sure she'll get those from those members that were not able to attend today, so that we can go in and set up, at least the next several meetings, if that works for everyone. Okay? Anything else?
Is he still with us?
Yeah, you're still there,
Oh.
aren't you, Randy?
I certainly am.
Okay.
Any more questions before we let him off the line? Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys, and I look forward to meeting all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on then to the sixth item on the agenda, which is program and facility update.
The town's birthday party is going to be February 14th. Lunch will be promptly at 11 o'clock because we do have a meeting in here that afternoon. Going to ask that people show up with that exactly as it went in the blast at 10:45 so that we can start lunch right at 11. You do have to pre-register for that. As part of that, we're having a bake-off that was also listed. So as people call in to register, we're asking if they are signing up for lunch or the bake-off. Shag lessons will begin February 29th and run for 6 weeks. That's going to be held at the chapel as a request because of the type of flooring that they have there. They did that last time and it was requested this time. Also, there was a conflict with to run 6 weeks with some of the meetings that'll be held here. So the chapel was offered to let us hold it there. I'm going to ask for board feedback on this. I know we're missing some members at doctor's appointments today, but based on who's here, and it might be a 2-2. The egg hunt, that takes board assistance. As you guys know, that's a large event that has all ages from the family. We run 2 heats, and there are people that work in here with food while people are outside. I've narrowed that to 2 dates, Saturday, March 30th, which is Easter weekend, or Friday, April 5th, which is when school's out in Brunswick County that week of the 1st through the 5th. So do you guys, when can more of you be here? Saturday, March 30th, or Friday, April 5th?
All of those that would be available on the 30th, raise your hand, please. We've got 2, okay? All of those that would be available April 5th, raise your hand.
At 4, April 5th it is. That announcement will be going out. And then as far as a fallback plan for concerts, several of you have asked me about that in case the pavilion is not available. What will be presented is for us we're looking into the cost, but we think the best option is the park across the street because there's a covered area for bands already there. They could play underneath the picnic shelter. It will take some logistics as far as more power will have to be dropped because they require a lot of power, and porta-johns will have to be put on site because those are one-stall units over there that can't take the load of that many people. But that would be a fallback plan if the pavilion's not available so that we can move forward with a concert series.
How about tie-dye?
Tie-dye could easily be converted over there too.
Okay.
And then as far as the inlet crossing project, I reported on it last month. I got an update just this morning from the project manager that they will be here February 8th to meet with different environmental agencies to everybody to agree on where the pipe will be laid, and then equipment on site February 16th. Or starting soon thereafter, but that was with a caveat that the contractor has had several delays, so there's no guarantee, but that's the best we have as of this meeting.
Okay. Anything or any questions? Christie, I have one question, or not one question, but one comment. On the egg hunt, can you let us know when and how we can help prepare for that? I know the general public that's here doesn't understand that we often spend a lot of hours stuffing plastic eggs to get in preparation for that. And we all like to contribute to help
Yes.
you with it. So if you'll just give us a timeline or days that they'll be available for us to come get our fair share of the stuff. Any other questions? Anything else, Christie, updates?
That's it for my updates today.
Okay. Again, any other questions?
So as far as the pavilion, we should find out from the next visit from the engineer whether or not we can have concerts there or not, if it's open for public use.
That, again, would go to the Board of Commissioners. So anything from the engineer will go straight to the board. And I can't give you a
Okay.
timeline on it at this point in time.
So for us, it doesn't matter if it's at there or over here or somewhere else. That, only thing we're looking at is just the concerts are gonna go on somewhere.
Yep.
Okay.
You got a plan?
Okay.
Well, there's a cost associated with
It's gonna have
those
to be
things.
funded.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it will be an evaluation once we get to those costs of whether it's in the current budget or it has to be added, like power and porta-johns.
Sure, but it would, if the,
Will that be decided at the next meeting so that you can move forward? Because you can't cancel these bands without a penalty, I wouldn't think, but just so late.
Staff is diligently working on it.
Okay.
but we don't have to, if there's additional cost, the Board of Commissioners is gonna decide on that, right?
Yes.
They don't have to come back to us.
No.
Okay, good.
Okay. All right, I think that's all. We're now on item number 7, which is public comment. If we have anyone who would like to speak, we just ask you to go to the podium. Okay, come on.
Carlton Pitman, 144 Tarpon. Selfish Park, the proposed kayak launch, absolutely a waste of time and money. That spot of land where you're putting it might have 2 feet of water in it at the highest tides. All the other tides, there's nothing but mud there, so you would be launching your kayak into mud, bringing it back into mud. That's just not, you're not, and I love kayak form, that's just not where you would put a kayak launch. There's not a great place at that location for a kayak launch unless you put it inside the entrance to the canal, which you really can't do that. Lot Q, looked at that a lot. I think you could, with some minor changes to the existing plan, use a lot of the existing plan. Go to pervious or impervious, or pervious or permeable hardscape, concrete or asphalt, whichever. That hopefully would allow you to reduce the amount of filtration or retention areas because you wouldn't have as much runoff. And then if you go to parallel to the road parking as opposed to perpendicular parking in the existing plan, that gives you 2 things. You would have to pave less around the perimeter because you don't need a 20 feet deep parking space for an SUV. You need a 10 feet wide space for a boat trailer. So then you would be able to move everything inside out toward the perimeter and maybe gain a little bit more interior space. So just, I think the existing plan has a lot of possibilities. and with some minor changes, you could use that and not have to re-engineer the wheel.
Thank you, Carlton,
Thank
for
you.
your comments. Okay, anyone else? Okay.
I'm Brent Shaver at 121 Tarpon. I know I was a little bit late and I may have missed this. This may have been addressed by the planning folks coming in. But the surveys, we talked about 496 or 95 people responded to a survey. Part of that was online. Is there any way to know how many of those, or what percentage of that number was an online survey as opposed to what people wrote on paper? Put down for that.
Have you looked at the entire plan yet?
No, I just picked it up.
Okay, at the back is broken out for you, so the online survey looks like this with all the comments. And then the very back pages are the written comments from the public input sessions.
Okay, would that be what people wrote on the cards that
Yep.
that showed up at the thing? Just as a general statement, online surveys really carry not nearly the weight as what somebody who shows up and writes out their card or fills out a survey, a written survey in the town. So I got a feeling that we got a really high percentage of online responses to this, and I'd like the folks to take that into consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Yes, sir?
Afternoon, Jim Merrill, 146 Tarpon and 182 Sailfish, ground zero. I want to be certain that the plan I saw and you approved with the technical adjustments, it wasn't clear that you said bathrooms are in or out. It sounded like the gentleman here said they're out.
They're out.
They're out.
Thank you for nodding. I know this isn't usually a dialogue, so thank you for that. Assuming no additional lighting, because an earlier version had night lighting and this sort of stuff. So that pretty much what we saw today is what you've moved forward, and I didn't hear any technical adjustments to that. Correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Can you state your addresses again, please?
146 Tarpon, 182 Sailfish.
Thank you.
As I was looking through the surveys also and all the comments, tons of folks in their written statements said, leave as is. I'm not sure the weight of that was accurately portrayed by the consultant. If you go through all those pages, leave as is, leave as is. That's my observation. The other thing is cabbage palms. A quick lookup says they grow to a pretty good height of 40 to 50 feet. Potential for blocking the view for a lot of people if you're concerned about that. I know you're looking to get shade at the same time, but the growth choice could affect view as well. So appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Jim.
what you guys do.
Thank you, Jim, for coming forward. Anyone else? Anyone else from the public would like to speak? Well, there being none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
So a second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You're adjourned.